The world's largest car company was not founded by an engineer. It was not built by a man who studied at MIT or graduated from a Tokyo engineering school with a dream of building automobiles. The company that makes more cars than any other manufacturer on Earth. The company whose vehicles sit in driveways from Delhi to Detroit to Dubai was founded by a man who made looms, wooden looms, for weaving fabric. You would think a boy born in a bamboo weaving village in rural Japan in 1867, the son of a carpenter who had never seen a motor car, who grew up watching his mother weave cloth by hand on a primitive wooden frame, could never build the automotive empire that would eventually put the entire American car industry on notice. Right? Well, Sakichi Toyoda would spend his life inventing the most advanced textile loom in human history, and the fortune that Loom created would become the seed money for his son Kiichiro to build Japan's first automobile. And that automobile would become Toyota, the company that today produces over 10 million vehicles every year and has taught the entire world how to manufacture anything, not just cars. This is a story about two men, a father and a son, and an obsession that passed between them like a flame. To find out how it started, we have to go back to 1867, Yamaguchi village, a small farming settlement in Shizuoka Prefecture, Japan. The year is 1867. Japan is in the final years of the Edo period, a feudal society almost completely closed to the outside world for over 2 centuries. There are no cars, no factories in the Western sense, no industrial economy. Into this world, Sakichi Toyoda was born. His father was a carpenter. His family was not wealthy, but from his earliest years, Sakichi showed something that would define his entire life. An absolute inability to accept that the way things were done was the best way they could be done. He watched his mother weave cloth on a primitive wooden hand loom for hours every day. Backbreaking, slow, repetitive work. The loom had not changed in generations. Nobody had questioned it. Nobody had asked whether there was a better way. Sakichi Toyoda asked. At the age of 26, with no formal engineering training, working from his family home with basic tools, Sakichi Toyoda built his first improved wooden hand loom. It was not revolutionary yet, but it was better, faster, easier on the weaver, and it was built entirely from his own observations of where the existing loom failed. He had not read about loom design in a textbook. He had watched his mother suffer and decided to fix it. This instinct, observe a problem, understand it completely, then eliminate it, would become the philosophical foundation of everything Toyota would later build. The Japanese would give it a name, Kaizen, continuous improvement. The idea that nothing is ever finished, nothing is ever good enough, and the pursuit of better never ends. Sakichi spent the next 2 decades obsessing over the loom, each version better than the last. In 1896, he received his first patent. In 1906, he established Toyoda Loom Works. And in 1924, at the age of 57, he completed his masterpiece, the Type G Toyoda automatic loom. The Type G was not just an improvement on existing looms. It was a different category of machine. It could automatically detect when a thread broke and stop itself before producing defective fabric. It did not need a human operator watching it every second. It watched itself. Sakichi called this principle Jidoka, automation with a human touch. In 1929, a British textile company called Platt Brothers purchased the patent rights to the Type G automatic loom for 1 million yen. an enormous sum, life-changing money for a carpenter's son from Yamaguchi village. Sakichi Toyoda was 62 years old. He had spent his entire life building toward this moment. And instead of retiring, he called his son Kiichiro into a room and told him to use the money to build Japan's first car. Kiichiro Toyoda had grown up watching his father's obsession. He had inherited the same fundamental wiring, the inability to accept that the way things were was the way they had to be. But where Sakichi had been consumed by the loom, Kiichiro had been captivated by something else entirely, the automobile. In the 1920s, American cars were appearing in Japan's cities. Ford had opened an assembly plant in Yokohama in 1925. General Motors followed. Kiichiro Toyoda looked at the American cars being assembled on Japanese soil and asked the same question his father had asked about the loom. Why can't we build one of these ourselves? In 1933, Kiichiro established an automobile department within Toyota Automatic Loom Works. His engineers obtained an American Chevrolet engine and disassembled it completely. They measured every part. They drew every component. Then they built the parts by hand from scratch, using Japanese materials and Japanese tools, and tried to reassemble something that worked. The early attempts failed. Repeatedly, the engine castings cracked. The metal was wrong. The tolerances were not precise enough. Kiichiro did not stop. He documented every failure. He understood every failure, and he fixed every failure one at a time. In 1936, 3 years after starting from nothing, Toyota produced its first production automobile, the Toyota AA, a four-door sedan, hand-built, imperfect by the standards of what would come later, but real. A Japanese car built by Japanese hands from Japanese materials. Japan had never seen anything like it. Then the war came. The Second World War devastated Japan and devastated Toyota. The company shifted to producing military trucks. Kiichiro's car dream was suspended. When the war ended in 1945, Japan lay in ruins. The American occupation imposed strict controls on industrial production. The economy had collapsed. By 1950, Toyota was nearly bankrupt. The company had too many workers, too much debt, and not enough demand. The banks demanded restructuring. Kiichiro Toyoda, to save the company, agreed to lay off a quarter of the workforce. The pain of that decision broke him. He resigned as president, taking personal responsibility for the suffering the layoffs caused. He died 2 years later in 1952, without seeing what Toyota would become. But the foundation he had laid was unbreakable. In the years after the war, a production engineer named Taiichi Ohno began working on the problem that had plagued Toyota since its founding. How do you build cars efficiently when you have limited capital, limited space, and cannot afford to waste anything? His answer would become the most influential manufacturing system in history. The Toyota production system eliminated waste at every stage. Raw materials arrived exactly when needed. Workers were empowered to stop the production line the moment they identified a defect. Every process was continuously examined and improved. The goal was not to produce more. The goal was to produce better, with less. Just-in-time manufacturing, Jidoka, Kaizen. The principles Sakichi Toyoda had embedded in a loom in a small Japanese village had been transferred, whole, into an automobile factory. And they worked with breathtaking efficiency. Through the 1960s and 1970s, Toyota grew at a pace that stunned the American automotive industry. Japanese cars were arriving in the United States, and they were better, more reliable, more fuel efficient. made with fewer defects. American manufacturers could not understand how a company that had started from nothing in 1933 was building cars they could not match. In 1973, the global oil crisis hit. Fuel prices exploded. Demand for large American cars collapsed overnight. Demand for small, fuel-efficient Japanese cars exploded. Toyota was ready. Detroit was not. Today, Toyota produces over 10 million vehicles a year across more than 50 countries. Its manufacturing philosophy has been studied and adopted by companies in every industry on Earth, from hospitals to software companies to airlines. It is arguably the most impactful contribution to modern management thinking ever made by a single organization. And it started with a wooden loom in a farming village in 1867, with a carpenter's son who could not accept that his mother's suffering was simply the way things had to be. Sakichi Toyoda gave his son 1 million yen and a dream. Kiichiro Toyoda gave the world a car, and the world gave Toyota everything.